They looked happy in the photo. Too happy. Rachel Monroe sat cross-legged in front of a lime-green tent, her pregnant belly round and radiant beneath a soft blue sweater. Behind her, her husband, Brian, crouched with one arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders, his bearded face split by a grin so wide it almost didn't fit in the frame. It was a picture that looked like a promise, a final breath of peace before life changed forever. That was the last anyone ever saw of them. The photo came in at 6:41 p.m., sent straight to Megan Monroe, Rachel's younger sister. It arrived with a short, glowing message. All set for the night. The desert's beautiful. Love you. Megan texted back within seconds. Heart emojis, a gentle nudge for Rachel to stay hydrated, and a little joke about don't go giving birth in the middle of a cactus field. She figured they'd be fine. That was yesterday. By the following afternoon, with no check-in from Rachel, that picture burned like a warning flare in Megan's mind. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. And a few miles away, in a quiet sheriff's station nestled on the edge of San Bernardino County, a retired K9 named Blitz, a black and tan German shepherd, began to pace restlessly in his kennel, like he already knew. Rachel and Brian had planned the camping trip as a baby moon, a final adventure before diapers, midnight feedings, and lullabies. Brian had just outfitted their white Ram ProMaster camper van, and Rachel, ever the school teacher, had made a checklist that could rival a NASA launch. They'd picked Joshua Tree National Park, aiming for somewhere quiet, somewhere wild. They weren't the spontaneous type, not really. Every piece of gear had its place. Every stop on the route was penciled in. Even the way they said goodbye was routine. But this silence, this vanishing, was not. Rachel had promised Megan she'd check in by noon. By 3 p.m., Megan was calling both their phones, straight to voicemail. At 5:08 p.m., she called the park service. A calm female voice on the other end took her seriously. A woman, 32 weeks pregnant, and her husband, both overdue to report back? Yes, that qualified as a priority concern. Megan forwarded the last known photo. The dispatcher promised to send rangers out immediately. 2 park rangers arrived at dusk. They knew the Monroes favored a spot off the beaten path. Miles from the nearest paved road, a semi-secluded knoll surrounded by creosote and massive boulders. It was a beautiful place to disappear. When they arrived, it was eerily quiet. The camper van sat in the soft sand, spotless and locked. 30 feet away, the tent stood firm in the breeze. The chairs were still out, angled toward a cold fire pit. The zipper of the tent was closed. Inside, 2 sleeping bags lay perfectly rolled. No signs of struggle, no blood. Not even a footprint out of place. Just nothing. The kind of nothing that made your skin crawl. When Deputy Erin Blake arrived the next morning, she brought along someone who hadn't been on duty in almost a year. Blitz, the department's retired K9, once a decorated search and rescue partner, now a semi-domesticated old hero with cloudy eyes but a still sharp nose. Erin had always said Blitz was smarter than most deputies, and right now they needed smart more than ever. As soon as they reached the site, Blitz jumped from the SUV without waiting for command. He circled the camper, sniffing low, and froze near the driver's side rear door. He pawed once, then sat. His signal. "Something's in here," Erin muttered. She didn't want to break the window. Too much risk of damaging evidence. Instead, they called in a locksmith. Inside, the van was pristine. Bed made, fruit and nut trail mix clipped shut on the counter. Full bottle of water untouched. But the real gut punch was sitting on the table. 2 wallets, Brian's and Rachel's. Cash still inside. Credit cards. Rachel's prenatal vitamins. And an old burner phone, powered off. All the things you wouldn't leave behind unless you were planning to return. Or unless you never got the chance. Aaron crouched next to Blitz as he sniffed around the floor of the van, his nose dragging across the laminate. He gave a short, dry bark. "Good boy," she whispered, scratching his ear. There was no forced entry, no blood, no drag marks in the sand, no logical reason they'd vanish in the night, leaving everything but their bodies and the clothes on their backs. It didn't look like foul play. It looked like an exit. But an exit to where? If you believe animals can be heroes in ways we still don't fully understand, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Heroes for Animals. We've got more stories just like this one. And trust us, they'll change the way you see the world. The case should have stayed hot. It didn't. For weeks, then months, the media circled the story. Young pregnant couple vanishes in National Park. Theories flew around. Alien abduction, cartel involvement, a secret affair gone wrong. But nothing stuck. No ransom, no digital trail, no sign of life. A shaky tip came from a gas station clerk 112 miles northeast. Said he saw someone kinda looking like Brian. Nervous guy buying a burner phone and a paper atlas in the middle of the night. Investigators grabbed onto that like a lifeline. Brian became the suspect, the man with the secret debt. The man whose name was now attached to possible murder-suicide. Megan begged them not to believe it. Blitz stopped being called out. The trail was considered cold. The van, eventually, was impounded, stored away like the hope that once filled it. Blitz, too, was put to rest, not by death, but by bureaucracy. And that photo, the one with the smiling man and the glowing woman, framed in desert light, was buried beneath public doubt and dusty files. But Blitz hadn't forgotten. Not even close. 2 years after Rachel and Brian Monroe vanished into the sands of Joshua Tree, the case had all but disappeared from public memory. The media moved on. The sheriff's office moved on. Even the desert seemed to swallow their absence, like it had grown used to holding secrets too heavy to carry elsewhere. But Blitz hadn't moved on. The German Shepherd spent his retirement days in Deputy Aaron Blake's backyard, stretched out under the oak tree, staring at the horizon like it might give something back. He was older now, slower, but not finished. Aaron knew the look in his eyes. It wasn't age. It was focus. The kind you get when you still know something's missing. And then, just as the case was fading into the files marked unsolved, the county sent a letter. The Monroe camper was being decommissioned. Aaron got the notice by email. The van, impounded and untouched since the second week of the investigation, was scheduled for auction in 2 weeks. But department policy required a full inventory before release. Aaron volunteered. The impound lot sat behind a rusted chain-link fence on the far side of the county garage. Most of the vehicles there were reminders of things gone wrong, DUIs, drug busts, accidents. But the Monroe van? That one was different. It had the silence of a tomb. Its white exterior was streaked with desert grime, like it had been left out in the sun too long, which it had. The once bright decals were faded, but it still looked whole, just hollow. Blitz walked beside Aaron without a leash. He didn't need one. His tail didn't wag. He didn't sniff around like he used to. He walked straight to the rear of the van and sat down. Just like before. Aaron blinked. "You remember this?" Blitz pawed once at the door. She unlocked it, sliding it open. The stale heat hit her face first. Dry, stagnant. The inside still looked untouched. Aaron moved methodically, clipboard in hand, cataloging everything left behind. Cookware, hiking boots, flashlight, 2 backpacks, camping stove. Blitz stayed outside for a while. Then, without warning, he climbed in. That's when things shifted. He began sniffing low along the side panels. His movements got sharper, focused. Then he stopped at the top row of overhead cabinets, one paw raised. "Here?" Aaron said quietly. She pulled herself up into the van and ran her hand along the cabinet seam. Her fingers brushed something odd, a seam that wasn't supposed to be there. Too clean, too flush. She grabbed a multi-tool from her duty belt and wedged it gently into the edge. The panel gave way with a soft click. It opened like a door. Inside was a gray cylindrical map tube, completely sealed. Back at the station, Aaron stood over the evidence table with gloves and caution. The tube was opened in a clean room. What they found wasn't a map. It was 3 of them, not the kind you buy at a gift shop. These were large-format, high-resolution geological survey maps of remote Joshua Tree terrain. The kind a serious prospector or geologist would use. Each was covered in handwritten pencil notes, coordinates, topographic readings, labels like pegmatite dike, rare float, check wash for trace minerals. Rachel and Brian hadn't gone out for a weekend getaway. They'd gone looking for something buried. Word of the maps spread fast through the sheriff's department. New buzz, new theories, but old habits die hard, and half the office still leaned on the idea that Brian had snapped, that debt had driven him to murder and vanish. Erin didn't believe it. She went straight to the source, Megan Monroe. Megan hadn't let go, not for a second. She kept her sister's voicemail saved on her phone. She still wore Rachel's hospital badge on her keychain. When Erin told her about the maps, Megan's face went pale. Brian was obsessed with this, she said. Not the baby, not the nursery. This. He'd been researching something in Joshua Tree for over a year. He didn't tell anyone. Rachel only found out a week before the trip. Erin leaned forward. Did she go willingly? She was scared, Megan whispered. But she loved him. She said they'd talk it out. He promised it was nothing dangerous. Erin took a slow breath. And what did you think now? I think they walked into something bigger than both of them. Erin reopened the case on her own time. She pulled old financial records. At first glance, Brian's bank account looked fine. But behind it, he'd taken out 3 short-term private loans from companies that no longer existed. Loans with interest rates so high they might as well have been threats. She traced them back. Shell companies, fake addresses. Someone had gone to great lengths to erase the trail. But then she found it. A business name on one application, Croft and Crane Consulting. She almost didn't believe it. Elliot Croft, Brian's former business partner, had been interviewed once, years ago, when the disappearance was fresh. Back then, he'd claimed they parted ways amicably. But now, the paper trail said otherwise. Croft had filed a civil suit against Brian 3 weeks before he vanished. A dispute over stolen data. Croft claimed Brian had hacked his server. The more Erin dug, the worse it looked. Croft had a geology degree from UC Davis, owned a rock shop in Oregon, and, according to a recently expired license, he once ran mineral surveys in protected federal land. Bingo! Erin wasn't the only one connecting dots. Blitz had changed again, not behaviorally, instinctually. When Erin left out the map with GPS coordinates on the kitchen table one night, Blitz stood on his back legs to sniff it. Then he pawed at the corner edge, just one, repeatedly. Erin cross-checked the GPS tag with park satellite maps. It marked an area not even accessible by foot during the summer. A box canyon. No trails, no roads. Just sand, boulders, and ancient rock. Exactly the kind of place you'd go if you wanted not to be found. The next morning, Erin filed for access. She pulled together a team, brought Blitz, and returned to the desert. It had been years, but the road looked the same, dusty, silent, and long. They parked half a mile out and hiked in. Blitz led, his ears perked, his gait confident despite his age. When they reached the coordinates, Erin saw it, a depression in the sand, half filled by wind and time. Blitz stopped. He didn't bark. He didn't dig. He just sat, one paw raised, nose low, a whisper in the stillness. Erin knelt beside him and scooped a bit of sand. It crumbled too easily, freshly disturbed underneath. She looked back at her partner. "You found it again, boy." Blitz pressed his nose gently into her hand. They marked the site, called it in, and began the first grid search in years. The team would bring forensic units out within 48 hours. But Aaron knew, so did Blitz, that whatever truth the desert had swallowed, it was about to cough up bones and secrets. And finally, Rachel Monroe might get to go home. The desert gives back what it wants, when it's ready. That morning, it gave them bones. The excavation began just after dawn. A quiet hum of voices, boots crunching in the sand, and the clink of trowels and brushes moving slow, deliberate, like they were peeling away time. The forensic team worked in a tight grid around the shallow depression Blitz had marked the day before. Every inch of ground treated like a confession waiting to be coaxed out. By noon, there was no more doubt. Human remains, partial at first. A curve of rib, then a pelvis, then the smooth arc of a skull. Deputy Aaron Blake stood back, hand on Blitz's collar, watching as the forensic anthropologist knelt in silence. Dr. Marcia Heller was seasoned. She'd worked mass graves overseas, but even she looked rattled as the full skeleton came into view. She was buried in a seated position, Dr. Heller said softly, brushing sand from the hips, almost fetal, knees drawn in. She paused. And there's more. Everyone stopped. Nestled between the pelvis bones was something heartbreakingly small. A second skeleton. Fragile, delicate, still curled in the position of the womb. "Oh, God," Aaron whispered. "Rachel." The find hit the sheriff's department like a lightning strike. The missing persons file that had sat on a cold case shelf for years was now a homicide. Rachel Monroe hadn't run away. She hadn't disappeared. She had been put in the ground, with her unborn child still inside her. And Blitz had found her. The discovery forced a shift in momentum. New eyes, new energy. A new task force formed within 24 hours. Aaron stayed on the team, officially this time. Blitz was reinstated with honors. The pressure came fast and hot. The media got wind. Headlines screamed, "Pregnant woman's remains found in desert. Cold case heats up." Megan Monroe stood in front of a podium, clutching the photo of her sister in front of the lime green tent, tears in her eyes. She wasn't crazy. She didn't leave. She was going to be a mom. She had a name picked out. Forensics moved quickly. The remains were sent to the county coroner. No soft tissue after so many years, just bone. But bones, Aaron learned, talk if you know how to listen. Dr. Heller focused on the neck vertebrae. If there had been trauma, strangulation, for instance, it would often show up as microscopic fractures. But what she found wasn't damage. It was something stranger. Under the scanning electron microscope, embedded deep in the porous surface of the bone, were metallic particles, fine, dust-like, too uniform to be from the soil, too heavy to be wind-blown. She had them tested. The lab came back with a word Aaron had never heard before: thorite, a rare earth mineral, naturally radioactive, not dangerous in small quantities, but definitely not common. The analyst explained that it could only be found in a handful of places in the U.S., and one of those was the exact region of Joshua Tree where Rachel's remains had just been discovered. Whoever buried her, Dr. Heller said, either worked with this mineral or buried her in a place where it was actively being extracted. Back at the station, Aaron pulled out the maps from the hidden compartment in the Monroe camper. She laid them across the evidence table. Each one had been folded neatly. Each one marked with cryptic notes. Check here. Trace reading. Possible float. Coordinates. Arrows. A thin circle in pencil wrapped around a canyon zone nearly identical to the site where Blitz had discovered Rachel's grave. The pieces were clicking into place, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. Aaron needed a name. She got it that afternoon. While scanning old court records, Aaron found the suit Brian Monroe's former partner, Elliot Croft, had filed just before the couple's disappearance. But this time she dug deeper. Croft wasn't just a consultant. He held a geology degree, had filed several mining-related business licenses under other LLCs, and once worked under a now-defunct group that had been warned by the Bureau of Land Management for conducting surveys on protected parkland. It wasn't solid proof, but it reeked. More telling was this. Croft's financials had spiked right after the time of the Monroe's disappearance. A sharp deposit. Then he moved north, opened a small hardware store in Bend, Oregon, went low profile. Too low profile. 2 days later, Aaron and Blitz flew north. It was cold in Bend. Gray clouds hung over the mountains like an unfinished thought. The hardware store sat at the corner of a sleepy street. Old-fashioned, neat, with bags of mulch stacked like bricks near the entrance. Inside, Elliot Croft looked exactly like someone who'd learned how to disappear in plain sight. "Deputy Blake?" he asked, his voice steady but cold. "You said this was about an old case?" Aaron nodded. Joshua Tree, Brian Monroe. The name hit him, barely. A twitch of his jaw, a flinch in his left eye. He recovered too quickly. "Oh, yes, that was awful," he said. "We hadn't spoken in a while. Business went sour, as these things do. Mind answering a few questions?" He didn't say no. The interrogation happened in the back office of the local sheriff's substation. Aaron brought Blitz in with her. Croft raised an eyebrow. "You brought a dog?" "He's not just a dog," Aaron said. Blitz sat near the desk, calm but alert, watching. Aaron slid a photo across the table. A printout of the scan showing thorite particles embedded in Rachel's bones. "We found these in the remains," she said. "Thorite. It's only found in a few places in North America. One of them, right where she was buried." Croft's smile froze. Aaron leaned in. "You worked with this stuff, didn't you?" "I don't even know what that is." "You filed permits back in 2010, applied for access on private surveys. We pulled the forms." Croft adjusted in his chair. "That was a long time ago." Aaron held up another image, a dusty boot print lifted from inside the Monroe camper and enhanced digitally. "We reanalyzed crime scene photos using new tech. This tread pattern, it's from a Redback Geo Classic. Specialized boots for geologists." She tossed a receipt onto the table. "You bought them in July 2011, 3 weeks before the Monroes vanished." Croft stared at the table. Blitz didn't move. He just kept watching him, still and solid as stone. Outside the room, Aaron paced. Inside, Croft sat silent for nearly 10 minutes. Then came the crack. "I told him not to bring her," Croft muttered. "It was supposed to be just the two of us." He rubbed his face hard, as if trying to erase it. "We argued. He said he'd go to the feds. I panicked. Hit him with my hammer. Didn't think it would kill him, but it did. She saw everything. She screamed. He didn't finish the sentence. Aaron didn't need him to. The recovery mission for Brian Monroe's body began the next morning. Croft had dumped him down an abandoned shaft over 150 feet deep. Aaron brought in a drone team from Cal State's robotics lab. Blitz watched from the edge, tail still, as the drone camera dipped into the pit and caught something wedged in the rocks below. A body, still clothed, still waiting. They found Brian. They found the truth. And for the first time in over a decade, the desert gave them justice. Blitz stood beside the gurney as it was wheeled past, his ears tilted forward. Aaron knelt beside him and whispered, "You never gave up on them, did you, boy?" He licked her hand once, then looked out across the sand, as if to say, "Not until they were found." The mineshaft was silent again. Long after the search crews left, after the body bags were zipped and the drone team packed up their gear, the desert stood still. That kind of silence doesn't feel peaceful. It feels final. Like a secret has just been told, and the land itself is holding its breath. But at the edge of that shaft, a German shepherd named Blitz sat unmoving. He stared into the opening with quiet focus, ears perked forward, like he was making sure something that had been buried too long had finally been seen. Deputy Erin Blake stood beside him, her boots sunk in soft sand. "Let's go home, partner," she whispered. Blitz didn't look away right away. But when he finally stood, he moved slowly, with the kind of tired purpose that said his job here was done. Back in San Bernardino County, the case that had haunted half the department for over a decade now had a name, a charge, and a timeline. The headlines read like something out of a Netflix documentary. Hardware store owner confesses to double murder in cold case. K9 tracks down truth in 11-year mystery. Justice for the Monroes at last. The press couldn't get enough. TV stations parked outside the courthouse. Talk shows debated motive. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. But inside the sheriff's office, there was no celebration, just relief. And wait, Croft had been formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. No bail, no plea deal, no out. He confessed, but that didn't mean the trial would be easy. Erin had sat through enough courtrooms to know how fast a good defense attorney could twist a confession into fog. She wanted more than a guilty verdict. She wanted the truth to stay undeniable. So she and the task force got to work. The forensic evidence built a wall around Elliot Croft. Rachel's bones still held microscopic thorite dust. That wasn't random. It tied her to an illegal mining operation. The same one Croft had been prospecting when Brian discovered what he was doing. Brian's clothing, pulled from the mine shaft, still carried traces of quartz dust and crushed pegmatite, consistent with the materials marked on Croft's hand-drawn maps. They recovered a burner phone Croft had dumped months after the murder. Just enough metadata left to prove it had pinged a tower 10 miles from the gas station where Brian had supposedly been spotted on the run. Croft had staged the sighting himself, wearing similar clothes and buying an atlas to fake a getaway. It was cold, calculated, brilliant, in the worst possible way. Still, the courtroom didn't care about brilliance. The courtroom cared about facts. Megan Monroe sat at the front row of every pre-trial hearing. Her eyes were clear, her face set. She carried Rachel's hospital ID badge in her jacket pocket and the folded sonogram printout from her sister's first ultrasound. Erin sat behind her. Blitz stayed home most days now, older, his hind legs stiff, but he had a presence in the trial. People knew. Everyone knew. When Croft's defense tried to argue that the confession was coerced, the prosecution dropped the hammer. They played the interview, showed the time-stamped images, cross-referenced the boot print lifted from the Monroe camper van with Croft's purchase receipts. Even brought in Dr. Heller to explain the thorite findings in plain English. It's not dirt, it's a smoking gun. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for just under 6 hours. Guilty. 2 counts. No chance of parole. Croft didn't react when the verdict was read. Us. He sat with the same hollow expression he'd worn since day one. Megan, however, collapsed into tears in Erin's arms. 11 years of weight fell at once. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Erin spoke only once. "We didn't solve this case with luck. We solved it with teamwork, science, persistence, and a dog who never gave up." The camera shutters clicked. She didn't need to say Blitz's name. Everyone already knew it. The department held a quiet ceremony the next week. Not for Croft, not for media, but for Rachel and Brian, and for the baby that never got a name. In a small garden behind the station, under a blooming jacaranda tree, a memorial plaque was placed, in memory of Rachel and Brian Monroe and their unborn child. Found, not forgotten. Blitz, K9 Unit, 2008-2023. Blitz sat quietly through the entire service, resting his chin on Erin's boot. The sun was warm, and for once it didn't feel harsh. It ceased to like peace. After the ceremony, Megan approached Erin with something wrapped in cloth. It was a collar, worn, frayed, with an old brass tag that read Blitz Sheriff's K9. "I had it cleaned up," Megan said, voice soft. "I want you to have it. You two earned it." Aaron swallowed hard. "He did most of the work," Megan smiled. "And you believed him. That's what counts." That night, Aaron sat on her porch with Blitz at her feet. The desert air still and quiet. She held the collar in her hand, thumb brushing over the faded letters. Inside, her phone buzzed with messages. Reporters, requests for interviews, national news networks asking for exclusives. She didn't answer any of them. Instead, she opened her notes app and started typing. Canine Blitz, reinstated after retirement. Located concealed evidence. Recovered primary burial site. Integral in reopening the case. Responsible for resolution. She stared at the screen for a while. Then she added one more line. Never stopped looking. Megan's voice message came a week later. She had driven out to the old campsite. The one from the photo. The green tent, the quiet chairs, the cold fire pit. She said she wanted to see it for herself one last time. To remember it how it was, not how it ended. There were fresh flowers at the base of the old creosote bush. No card, no note. She didn't know who left them. Aaron smiled when she played that part again. She had a good idea. As for Blitz, he spent his last months doing what he loved most. Riding shotgun with Aaron on patrol, nose pressed to the passenger window, ears twitching in the breeze. He never stopped tracking everything. The wind, the sound of engines, the scent of storms before they arrived. And though the world around them went back to normal, news cycles moved on, other cases took over. One thing remained. People still believed in the dog who found the truth. Not by accident, not by magic, but because he refused to let go. You'd think that when a case ends, the story does too. But sometimes, the real story doesn't begin until after the final verdict. It's in the silences. What people say when the cameras are gone. What they carry home when the headlines fade. And for Deputy Aaron Blake, it was in the little things. The scent of pine on her uniform, the low hum of the morning shift radio, the creak of Blitz's dog bed when he rolled over in his sleep. Justice had come. The Monroes were at rest. Elliot Croft was locked away for life. But none of it made her feel finished. Blitz was slower now. His hips clicked when he stood. His tail wagged lower. The muscles that once pulled through search zones for hours now needed help just getting up the porch steps. Aaron bought dog stairs, heated his food, brushed his coat every night like a ritual. One morning, after their short walk behind the station, she looked down to find him sitting near the old patrol car, staring at the door. Not whining, not barking, just waiting. He wanted back in. "Really?" she chuckled. "You think you're still on the clock?" He lifted his eyes to hers, those same deep amber eyes that once scanned deserts for buried bones, and gave a soft huff. She opened the door. "Come on, partner. One last ride." They drove familiar roads, past the little taco stand off Route 62 where Rachel and Brian had eaten their last meal, past the gas station where Croft had staged the false sighting, past the quiet suburban streets where Megan Monroe was trying to rebuild her life, one slow, quiet breath at a time. Blitz rested his head on the window's edge, watching the world blur past. They weren't looking for anything, but that didn't mean they weren't finding something. Later that afternoon, Aaron got a call from a local middle school teacher named Gina Abbott. She ran a civic leadership class, 8th graders who had been following the Monroe case as part of a criminal justice project. "They've written letters," Gina said. "To Blitz." Aaron blinked. "To my dog?" "Yeah," the teacher laughed. "They say he deserves a medal, or a steak dinner, or both." When Aaron showed Blitz the thick envelope full of lined notebook paper and glitter-glued cards, he sniffed each one, then gently lay his paw on the stack. Aaron read them aloud that night. "Dear Blitz, Thank you for being the kind of dog that never gave up, even when humans did. Blitz, you helped people believe in things again, like hope and dogs. If you could talk, I bet you'd say, I told you so. That weekend, something unexpected happened. The sheriff's department threw a retirement ceremony for Blitz. Not the usual service dog send-off. This one had cake, kids, reporters, and a surprisingly emotional speech from the mayor, who admitted through tears that she cried when the baby bones were found. Blitz wore a crisp blue bandana, with his badge number stitched in silver thread. He didn't bark, didn't whine, just sat next to Aaron as the room stood for a standing ovation that lasted longer than any court hearing ever had. The plaque they gave him read, "For extraordinary service in pursuit of truth and loyalty that never wavered. Canine Blitz, you brought them home." But even heroes get tired. That summer, Blitz slept more. His walks got shorter. He stopped jumping into the front seat without help. Erin adjusted. She stopped treating him like a tool and started treating him like something else. A friend. A mentor. In fur. And when the end came, it came gently. One August night, Erin woke up to the sound of paws shuffling on hardwood. Blitz had wandered out to the front porch by himself. She found him sitting there, staring into the darkness, his chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. She sat beside him, wrapped her arm around his neck. "It's okay," she whispered. "You did your job." He rested his head on her knee, and when the sun came up, he was still. The whole department showed up to the burial. They laid him to rest under a cottonwood tree, just behind the canine training yard. Megan sent flowers. The sheriff gave a speech. Even some of the middle schoolers came, holding up a banner that read, "You found the truth, Blitz." But Erin didn't speak. She didn't need to. She just placed his collar, worn leather and brass, at the base of the tree and whispered, "Stay, rest." Then walked away. Weeks passed. The world moved forward. But stories have a strange way of sticking around, especially when they've got teeth. One day, Erin got a message from a production company in Los Angeles. They wanted to option the story for a documentary series. Interviews, photos, a possible book. Maybe even a dramatized miniseries. Erin said no. Then she called Megan. "What do you think?" she asked. Megan paused. "I think if we tell it right. Not the murder part, the part about the dog, the part about never giving up." So Erin agreed, but only under one condition. We tell it from Blitz's point of view. The documentary aired 6 months later. Titled The Dog Who Waited, it became an overnight hit. Narrated by a quiet, gravel-voiced actor, it didn't focus on the killer or the trial or the gruesome headlines. It focused on a dog who sat quietly in a van one hot day and told the world, "They're still out there." It showed Erin brushing sand from Blitz's muzzle, showed drone footage of the canyon, played the voicemail Rachel left Megan, showed that green tent photo, and it ended with a slow pan of Blitz's resting place under the cottonwood tree, sunlight flickering through leaves. Over 5 million people watched in the first week. Hundreds wrote letters. One woman in Montana started a search and rescue canine scholarship fund in Blitz's name. A retired Army handler in Georgia said he cried for the first time in 10 years. And one little girl from Colorado sent Erin a drawing. A dog with wings, standing in the desert, tail wagging, next to a woman holding a baby in her arms. Erin kept that drawing on her desk. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was true. Because long after the court cases and the press and the paperwork, that's how she saw it too. Somewhere in a quiet canyon under the stars, Blitz was still walking those trails, still sniffing the wind, still watching. It had been a year since the truth came out. A year since Elliot Croft was convicted. A year since the world learned that a dog with aging legs and a loyal heart solved the mystery that experts had abandoned. But the story didn't disappear. It spread. It took root in quiet places, on military bases where handlers whispered Blitz's name with reverence, In classrooms where kids wrote essays about perseverance, in sheriff's offices across the country where new deputies now studied the Monroe case not as a tragedy, but as a lesson. And for Deputy Aaron Blake, the story never left her side. The desert hadn't changed. It still stretched wide and silent, filled with sagebrush and rock formations that looked like ancient monuments. But something about it felt different now. Not softer exactly, but less haunted. Every few months, Erin drove back to that place where the green tent once stood. She didn't stay long. She never unpacked. But she always brought one thing with her: a single treat. She placed it gently in the sand beneath the cottonwood tree at Blitz's resting place. He'd have sniffed it, then waited until I said okay, she whispered once, laughing softly through tears. Grief doesn't leave. It just folds itself into routine. One fall afternoon, Megan invited Erin to a small community center gathering. Nothing big, just a few dozen people, some folding chairs, a slideshow, and a table set up with coffee and sugar cookies. The event was titled Voices of Closure, and the guest speaker was listed as Aaron Blake, Deputy Sheriff, Returnee Handler, Monroe case. Erin almost didn't show, but when she walked in and saw a young girl with a toy police dog in her lap and a handwritten sign on her shirt that read Blitz Jr., she smiled, sat down, and opened her folder. She didn't read her speech. She told the story. Told it like you'd tell it around a fire pit. Like you'd tell it if it were your own family. She told them about Rachel and Brian. About the photo in front of the lime green tent. About the call that never came. About the hidden maps, the dust, the lies, the mine shaft, the courtroom. But most of all, she told them about the dog who wouldn't stop searching. Afterward, a boy named Zach, maybe 10 years old, asked her a question. Do you think Blitz knew what he was doing the whole time? She knelt down to meet him eye to eye. I don't think, she said. I know. Not long after that night, the county commissioned a permanent memorial at Joshua Tree Visitor Center, a low stone bench engraved with 3 names, Rachel, Brian, and baby Monroe. Next to it, etched into the rock, in memory of those we lost, and the dog who led them home. People still visit. Some leave flowers, others leave dog treats. One woman left a folded dollar bill with a note that read, "This is all I had, but he deserved it." Life moved forward. Megan remarried, slowly and without apology. She opened a small counseling practice, specializing in unresolved trauma. Her office had one photo on the wall, Blitz sitting in the desert, eyes on the horizon, wind pulling at his ears. Erin eventually left law enforcement for good. She moved north, bought a cabin near a river, and took long walks in the woods each morning, still pausing every now and then to glance behind her, half expecting paw prints in the dirt beside her boots. She didn't get another dog, not because no other dog could compare, but because Blitz had taught her something deeper, that some companions only come once, and when they do, you don't replace them. You remember them. On what would have been Blitz's 15th birthday, Erin received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a hand-carved wooden sculpture of a German shepherd, chiseled with precision, posture noble, tail curved gently, eyes tilted toward the wind. On the bottom, burned into the base, were the words, "Good boy." She placed it on the windowsill above her kitchen sink. Now, every morning, when the coffee pot gurgles and the sun spills in through the trees, he's still there, still watching, still waiting for the next trail to follow. This wasn't a story about murder. It wasn't even a story about mystery. It was a story about persistence, about the quiet, relentless way love can echo through time and claw its way through layers of silence. Blitz never barked when he found clues. He didn't need to. He just sat down, raised one paw, and told the world, here, start here. And maybe that's what we're meant to do too. In a world that often moves too fast, forgets too quickly, and turns its back when the trail goes cold, maybe the bravest thing any of us can do is what Blitz did. Wait! Watch! Refuse to stop believing that the truth matters. Even if it takes years. Even if you're the last one who still cares. So tonight, if you're reading this or listening in the dark, with your phone in your hand and your dog curled up at your feet, remember this. One dog, one deputy, and one family found peace because someone refused to walk away. Maybe you're that someone for someone else. Maybe you already are. Thank you for staying with us through this story. From the first mysterious photo in the desert to the final moment under the cottonwood tree, we hope Blitz's journey reminded you of something important: loyalty, truth, and the power of not giving up. Now we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment where a pet seemed to know more than people did? What would you do if the person everyone gave up on was someone you loved? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to share this story with someone who needs a little reminder that the truth always finds a way.